of many a slaughtered man. And now the winged knees of this great captain bore aloft. Against the flood he flies with full assault. And now the winged knees of this great captain bore aloft. Against the flood he flies. Against the flood he flies with full assault. Nor could that god make shrink his rescued thighs. Nor shrunk the flood, but as his foe grew powerful, he grew mad, thrust up a billow to the sky, and crystal Simois bade to his assistance. All right, let's pull in Xanthus's voice. We're gonna probably need Achilles again. Hera definitely, or rather Juno. Maybe Neptune. Hephaestus doesn't speak, but we'll pull him in anyway. Vulcan. Past all power feeds thy will, thou great grandchild. 1, 2. Simois bade to his assistance. Simois, ho, brother! Out he cried. Come, add thy current, and resist this man half deified, or Ilian he will pull down straight. The Trojans cannot stand a minute longer. Come, assist, and instantly command all fountains in thy rule to rise, all torrents to make in. 1, 2, 3. All fountains in thy rule to rise, all torrents to make in, and stuff thy billows, with whose height engenders such a din, with trees torn up and justling stones, as so amain a man may shrink beneath us, whose power beneath us, whose power thrives do my power. May shrink beneath us, whose power thrives do my power all it can. He dares things fitter for a god. But nor his form, nor force, nor glorious arm shall profit it, all which and his dead corse I vow to roll up in my sands, nay, bury in my mud. Nay, in the very sinks of Troy that poured into my flood shall make him drowning work enough. And, being drowned, I'll set a fort of such strong filth on him that Greece shall never get his bones from it. There shall stand Achilles' sepulchre, and save a burial for his friends. This fury did transfer his high-ridged billows on the prince, roaring with blood and foam and carcasses. The crimson stream did snatch into her womb surprised Achilles, and her height stood, held up by the hand of Jove himself. Then Juno cried and called to countermand this watery deity, and called to countermand this watery deity, the god that holds command in fire, afraid that lest the gulf-stomached flood would satiate his desire on great Achilles. Who was that? Afraid lest that gulf-stomached flood would satiate his desire on great Achilles. Mulciber, my best-loved son, she cried, rouse thee, for all the gods conceive this flood thus amplified is raised at thee, and shows as if his waves would drown the sky, and put out all the sphere of fire. Haste, help thy empery, light flames deep as his pits. Ourself, the west wind and the south will call out of the sea, and breathe in either's full-charged mouth a storm to enrage the fires 'gainst Troy, which shall, in one exhaled, blow flames of sweat about their brows, and make their armors scald. Go thou then, and 'gainst these winds Go thou then, and 'gainst these winds rise, make work on Xanthus' shore, with setting all his trees, Xanthus' shore, with setting all his trees on fire, and in his own breast pour a fervor that shall make it burn. Nor let fair words or threats avert that, nor let fair words or threats avert thy fury, till I speak, and then subdue the heats of all thy blazes. I speak, and then subdue the heats of all thy blazes. Mulciber prepared a mighty fire, first in the field burning up the bodies that the ire of great Achilles reft of souls. The quite drowned field it dried, and shrunk the flood up. The quite drowned field it dried, and shrunk the flood up. And as fields that have been long time cloyed with catching weather, when their corn lies on the gravel heap, or with a constant north wind dried, with which for comfort leap their hearts that sowed them. So this field was dried, the bodies burned, and even the flood, into a fire as bright as day was turned. Elms, willows, tamarisks were inflamed. The lote trees, the seagrass reeds, and rushes, with the galangale roots of which abundance breeds about the sweet flood, all were fired. The gliding fishes flew upwards in flames, the groveling eels crept upright, all which slew wise Vulcan's unresisted spirit. The flood out of a flame cried to him. Oh, that's Vulcan, not. Past all power. Out of a flame cried to him. The flood out of a flame cried to him. Cease, O Mulciber. No deity can tame thy matchless virtue. Nor would I, since thou art thus hot, strive. Cease then thy strife, let thee to sun with all thy wished haste drive, even to their gates, these Ilians. What toucheth me their aid or this contention? Thus in flames the burning river prayed, and as a cauldron, underput with store of fire, and wrought with boiling of a well-fed brawn, up leaps with wave aloft, bavins of sere wood urging it, and spending flames apace, till all the cauldron be engirt with a consuming blaze. So round this flood burned, and so sod his sweet and tortured streams, nor could flow forth, bound in the fumes of Vulcan's fiery beams, who, then not moved, his mother's ruth by all his means he craves, and asked why Vulcan should invade, who, then not moved, his mother's ruth by all his means he craves, and asked why Vulcan should invade and so torment his waves past other floods, when his offense rose not to such degree as that of other gods for Troy, and that himself would free her wrath to it if she were pleased, and prayed her that her son might be reflected, adding this, that he would never be one to help keep off the ruinous day in which all Troy should burn, fired by the Grecians. This vow heard, Grecians. This vow heard, she charged her son to turn his fiery spirits to their homes, and said it was not fit a god should suffer so for men. And said it was not fit a god should suffer so for men. Then Vulcan did remit his so unmeasured violence, and back the pleasant flood ran to his channel. Thus these gods she made friends, the others made friends. The others stood at weighty difference. Both sides ran together with a sound that earth resounded. And great heaven about did sure abound. Jove heard it, sitting on his hill, and laughed to see the gods buckle to arms like angry men. And he pleased with their odds, they laid it freely. Of them all, thumb buckler Mars began, and at Minerva with a lance of brass he headlong ran. Of them all, thumb buckler Mars began, and at Minerva with a lance of brass he headlong ran, these vile words ushering his blows. Okay, I think I have a Mars voice. He would have spoken by now in the regular poem, but okay, good. Sometimes Chapman skips dialogue lines. O Priam's sons, how long the slaughter? So I forgot about this part with the Battle of the Gods. So we got to pull in Minerva. We got to pull in Diana, which I don't have. We pull in Hera, which we have, or Juno. Mercury. Do I have don't have Mercury? I don't think Leto actually says anything. I don't know that Venus says anything, but we'll pull her in. For now, we want Mars. Of your men can you sustain these vile words ushering his blows? Thou dog fly, what's the cause thou makest gods fight thus? Thy huge heart breaks all our peaceful laws with thy insatiate shamelessness. Okay. With thy insatiate shamelessness. Rememberest thou the hour when Diomed charged me, and by thee, and thou with all thy power tookst lance thyself, and in all sights rushed on me with a wound. Now vengeance falls on thee for all. For all. This said, the shield fringed round with fighting adders, borne by Jove, that not to thunder yields, he clapped his lance on. And this god, that with the blood of fields pollutes his godhead, that shield pierced and hurt the armed maid. But back she leapt, and with her strong hand rapped a huge stone laid above the champaign. Black and sharp, that did in old time break partitions to men's lands. And that she dusted in the neck of that impetuous challenger. And Let's get the Minerva voice ready. I am sent from Juno. Above the champagne, black and sharp, that in old time break partitions to men's lands, and that she dusted in the neck of that impetuous challenger, Down to the earth he swayed, and overlaid 7 acres land. His hair was all bewrayed with dust and blood mixed, and his arms rang out. Minerva laughed. His arms, blood mixed, and his arms wrung out. Minerva laughed, and thus insulted. O thou fool, yet hast thou not been taught to know mine eminence. Thy strength opposest thou to mine? 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 Opposest thou to mine? Thy strength opposest thou to mine? So pay thy mother's fury then, who with these aids of thine ever afforded perjured Troy, Greece ever left takes spleen, and vows thee mischief. Thus she turned her blue eyes, when love's queen the hand of Mars took, and from earth raised him with thick-drawn breath, his spirits not yet got up again. But from the press of death kind Aphrodite was his guide. Which Juno, seeing, exclaimed, Pallas, see, Mars is helped from field. Dog fly, his rude tongue named thyself even now. Dogfly, his rude tongue named thyself even now. Dogfly, his rude tongue named thyself even now. But that his love, that dogfly, will not leave her old consort. Upon her fly. Minerva did receive this excitation joyfully, and at the Cyprian flew. Struck with her hard hand, her soft breast a blow that overthrew. Her soft breast a blow that overthrew both her and Mars. And there both lay together in broad field. When thus she triumphed. So lie all that any succors yield to these false Trojans gainst the Greeks. So bold and patient as Venus, shunning charge of me, and no less impotent be all their aids than hers to Mars. So short work would be made of our depopulating Troy, this hardiest to invade of all earth's cities. So short work would be made in our depopulating Troy, this hardiest to invade of all earth's cities. At this wish, white-wristed Juno smiled. Next Neptune and Apollo stood upon the point of field, and thus spake Neptune. Next Neptune and Apollo stood upon the point of field, and thus spake Neptune. I didn't pull in the Apollo voice. Father of gods, will any man? And thus spake Neptune. Phoebus, come, why at the lance's end stand we two thus? Phoebus, come, why at the lance's end stand we two thus? 'Twill be a shame for us to reascend Jove's golden house, being thus in field and not to fight. Begin, for 'tis no graceful work for me. Begin, for 'tis no graceful work for me. Thou hast a younger chin, I older and no more. O fool, what a forgetful heart thou bearest about thee, to stand here, pressed to take the Ilian part, and fight with me. Forgetst thou then what we alone of all the gods have suffered here, when proud Laomedon enjoyed our service a whole year for our agreed reward? Our service a whole year for our agreed reward? Jove in his sway would have it so, and in that year I reared this broad, brave wall about this town. Have it so, and in that year I reared this broad, brave wall about this town, that being a work of mine, it might be inexpugnable. This service then was thine, in Ida, that so many hills and curled head forest crown, to feed his oxen, crooked-shanked, and headed like the moon. His oxen, crooked-shanked, and headed like the moon. But when the much joy-bringing hours brought term for our reward, the terrible Laomedon, But when the much joy-bringing hours brought term for our reward, the terrible Laomedon dismissed us both, and scared our high deservings, not alone to hold our promised fee, but give us threats too. Hand and feet he swore to fetter thee, and sell thee as a slave, dismissed far hence to foreign isles. Nay, more, he would have both our ears. His vows breach and reviles made us part angry with him then. And dost thou gratulate now such a king's subjects, or with us not their destruction vow, even to their chaste wives and their babes? Their vow, even to their chaste wives and their babes. He answered, Betwixt death and thy life, and ruin and those towers, ere this day oft has held his shield. And their babes. He answered, He might hold his wisdom little, if with him, a god for men he would maintain. He might hold his wisdom little, if with him a god, for men he would maintain content, for men he would maintain contention. Wretched men that flourish for a time like leaves, eat some of that earth yields, and give earth in their prime their whole selves for it. Quickly then, let us fly fight for them, nor show it offered. Let themselves bear out their own extreme. Thus he retired, and feared to change blows with his uncle's hands. His sister, thus he retired, and feared to change blows with his uncle's hands. His sister therefore chid him much. His sister therefore chid him much. The goddess that commands in games of hunting, and thus spake. Okay, we gotta make a voice for Artemis, or rather, Diana. Okay. And we're also gonna need a Mercury in a little bit. All right. We're at 30. Fliest thou, and leav'st the field to Neptune's glory? The goddess that commands in games of hunting, and thus spake. Fliest thou, and leav'st the field? Fliest thou, and leav'st the field to Neptune's glory, and no blows? O fool, why dost thou wield the... Fliest thou, and leav'st the field to Neptune's glory, and no blows? O fool, why dost thou wield thy idle bow? No more my ear shall hear thee vaunt in skies, dares to meet Neptune. Hear thee vaunt in skies, dares to meet Neptune. But I'll tell to meet Neptune, but I'll tell thy coward's tongue it lies. He answered nothing. He answered nothing. Yet Jove's wife could put on no such reins, but spake thus loosely. I might have made Artemis too close to... Who was that? All right. I think it's fine. No such reins, but spake thus loosely. How darest thou, dog? How darest thou, dog, whom no fear contains, encounter me? 'Twill prove a match of hard condition, though the great lady of the bow and Jove hath set thee down for lion of thy sex, with gift to slaughter any dame thy proud will envies. Yet some dames will prove the hads. Some dames will prove thou hadst better tame wild lions upon better tame wild lions upon hills than them. But if this question rests yet under judgment in thy thoughts, and that thy mind contests, I'll make thee know it. Thy mind contests, I'll make thee know it. Suddenly, with her left hand, she catched both Cynthia's palms, locked fingers fast, and with her right she snatched from her fair shoulders her gilt bow, and laughing, laid it on about her ears, and every way her turning seized upon, till all her arrows scattered out, her quiver emptied quite. And as a dove that flying a hawk takes to some rock her flight, and in his hollow breast sits safe, her fate not yet to die, so fled she, mourning, and her bow left there, and her bow left there. Then Mercury his opposite thus undertook. Okay, we need Mercury here. 33, 30. Latona, at no hand will I bide combat. His opposite thus undertook. Latona, at no hand will I bide. Latona, at no hand will I bide combat. Latona, at no hand will I bide combat. 'Tis a work right dangerous to stand at difference with the wives of Jove. Go, therefore, freely vaunt amongst the deities thou hast subdued, and made thy combatant yield with thy plain. And made thy combatant yield with plain power. She answered not, but gathered up the bow and shafts fallen from her daughter's side, retiring. Up did go Diana to Jove's starry hall. Her daughters sighed, retiring. Up did go Diana to Jove's starry hall, her incorrupted veil trembling about her so she shook. Phoebus, lest Troy should fail before her fate, flew to her walls. To Jove's starry hall, her incorrupted veil trembling about her so she shook. Phoebus, lest Troy should fail before her fate, flew to her walls. The other deities flew up to Olympus, some enraged. The other deities flew up to Olympus, some enraged, some glad. Achilles slew both. Fail before her fate, flew to her walls. Phoebus, lest Troy should fail before her fate, flew to her walls. The other deities flew up to Olympus, some enraged, some glad. Achilles slew both men and horse of Ilion, and as a city fired, casts up a heap that purples heaven, clamors and shrieks expired in every corner, toil to all, to many misery, which fire the incensed gods let fall. Achilles so let fly rage on the Trojans, toils and shrieks as much by him imposed. Old Priam in his sacred tower stood, and and the flight disclosed on his forced people, all in rout, and not a stroke returned by fled resistance. His eyes saw in what a fury burned. His eyes saw in what a fury burned the son of Peleus, and down went weeping from the tower to all the port guards, and their chiefs told of his flying power, commanding the opening of the ports, but not to let their hands stir from them, for Aeacides would pour in with his bands. All right, we got to pull in Priam. I definitely have a Priam. Come, loved daughters, sit by me, and take the worthy. Not let their hands stir from them, for Aeacides would pour in with his bands. Destruction comes. Oh, shut them straight when we are in, he prayed. For not our walls, I fear, will check this violent man. Destruction comes. Oh, shut them straight when we are in, he prayed. For not our walls, I fear, will check this violent man. This said, off lifted they the bars, the ports hailed open, and they gave safety her entry with the host. Which yet they could not save, had not Apollo sallied out and struck destruction, brought by Achilles in their necks back when they right upon the ports bore all, dry, dusty, spent, and on their shoulders rode rabid Achilles with his lance, still glory being the goad that pricked his fury. still glory being the goad that pricked his fury. Then the Greeks high-ported Ilion had seized, had not Apollo stirred Antenor's famous son, divine Agenor, and cast in an undertaking spirit to his bold bosom, and himself stood by to strengthen it, and keep the heavy hand of death from breaking in. The gods stood by him, leaning on a beach, and covered his abode with night-like darkness. Yet, for all the spirit he inspired, when that great city-razor's force his thoughts struck, he retired. He inspired. When that great city-razor's force his thoughts struck, he retired, stood, and went on, a world of doubts still falling in his way. When, angry with himself, he said... Okay, we need an Agenor voice. All right. In his way, why suffer I this stay in this so strong need to go on? Why suffer I this stay in this so... Why suffer I this stay in this so strong need to go on? Mostly we just needed to not sound like Apollo or Achilles, because they're the ones who are going to talk. Betwixt death and thy life, why suffer I this? Why suffer I this stay? Maybe something like that. Falling in his way, when angry with himself, he said, why suffer I this stay in this so strong need to go on? If, like the rest, I fly, 'tis his best weapon to give chase, being swift. If, like the rest, I fly, 'tis his best weapon to give chase, being swift, and I should die like to a coward. If I stand, I fall too. These two ways please not my purpose. I would live. What if I suffer these still to be routed, and my feet affording further length, pass all these fields of Ilion, till Ida's sylvan strength and steep heights shroud me, and at even refresh me in the flood, and turn to Ilion. O my soul, why drown'st thou in the blood of these discourses? Why drown'st thou in the blood of these discourses? If this course that talks of further flight I give my feet, his feet more swift have more odds. Get he sight of that pass, I pass least for pace, and length of pace his thighs will stand out all men. Meet him then, my steel hath faculties of power to pierce him. His great breast but one soul holds, and that death claims his right in, all men. Say. One soul holds, and that death claims his right in, all men say. But he holds special state in Jove's high bounty. That's past man, that every way will hold, and that serves all men every way. That every way will hold, and that serves all men every way. And that serves all men every way. And that serves all men every way. This last heart made him bold to stand Achilles. Every way. This last heart made him bold to stand Achilles, and stirred up a mighty mind to blows. And as a panther, having heard the hound's trail, doth disclose her freckled forehead, and stares forth from out some deep-grown wood, to try what strength dares her abroad. And when her fiery blood the hounds have kindled, no quench serves of love to live or fear, though struck, though wounded, though quite through she feels the mortal spear. But till the man's close strength she tries, or strows earth with his dart, she puts her strength out. So it fared with brave Agenor's heart. And till Achilles he had proved, no thoughts, no deeds once stirred his fixed foot. To his broad breast his round shield he preferred, and up his arm went with his aim, his voice out with this cry. Thy hope is too great, Peleus' son, this day to show thine eye Troy's Iliad at thy foot. O fool, the Greeks with much more woes, Yeah, this is still Agenor, not Apollo. The Greeks with much more woes, more than are suffered yet, must buy great Iliad's overthrows. We are within her many strong, that for our parents' sakes, our wives and children, will save Troy. And thou, though he that makes thy name so terrible, shall make a sacrifice to her with Though he that makes thy name so terrible shall make a sacrifice to her with thine own ruins. Thus he threw, nor did his javelin err, but struck his foe's leg near his knee. The fervid steel did ring against his tin greaves, and leapt back. The fire's strong-handed king gave virtue of repulse. And then Iacides assailed divine Agenor. And then Iacides assailed divine Agenor. Iacides assailed divine Agenor. But in vain. Apollo's power prevailed, and rapt Agenor from his reach, whom quietly he placed without the skirmish, casting mist to save from being chased his tendered person. And he gone to give his soldiers scape, the deity turned Achilles still, by putting on the shape of him he thirsted. Evermore he fed his eye and fled, and he with all his knees pursued, so cunningly he led. That still he would be near his reach, to draw his rage with hope far from the conflict. To the flood, maintaining still the scope of his attraction. In meantime, the other frighted powers came to the city, comforted, when Troy and all her towers strewed with fillers. None would stand to see who stayed without, who scaped, and who came short. The ports cleft to receive the rout that poured itself in. Every man was for himself. Most fleet, most fortunate. Whoever escaped, most fortunate. Whoever escaped, his head might thank his feet. Whoever escaped, his head might thank his feet. Whoever escaped, his head might thank his feet. Whoever escaped, his head might thank his feet.